Evening, everyone. Um, how are you all? Another Wednesday night, another very cool chat with very cool guests. Let me just find Ebonie will be coming on any minute now. Let me think she's there. Hang on. Here she comes. Here she comes. Yay!
Yay!
How are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to get you on, actually. I'm going to use it as like a personal therapy session for an hour.
Please do.
No, so for anyone who doesn't know Ebonie, amazing podcast, Adulting with Ebonie, but author, advocate, artist, coach, and I'll get you to explain it a bit in a minute, but helping creative misfits get rid of guilt and find their empowerment and just find their true self and lead happier lives, basically,
Yeah.
in a nutshell. um, yeah, explain. So no, explain because there's so many bits to you. Just yeah, completely correct what I just said and
You
describe what
didn't
you are.
you you didn't say anything that needs correcting. I think the simplest way of explaining what I do is I help people give less fucks. Can I say that? It's like people look at me and they see this confident, brave, courageous, artistic, creative, woman who's doing her thing out in the world. And like, what the one thing I don't want anyone to know about me is that I have no idea what I'm doing. Every single day, I'm like, but what will people think of me? How will I look? Will I show up right? Am I doing enough? Like all of that, it still exists. And so my job in the world is to help people not get rid of the stuff in their life that scares them or that feels like an obstacle or that is overwhelming or is too much, but become ninjas so that they can just navigate gracefully, kind of Neo style, through it all and
Yeah.
show up and have a life that they really enjoy and that feels as good on the inside as it perhaps looks on the outside.
How did you? So how? What is the story? Because everyone has a story, and I love stories of people. And how did you get into it? Because it's like you and we've had some other amazing guests to chat to, and it's sort of everyone's ended up doing these amazing things within, and especially within sexuality and stuff, that you never really, especially as a girl, gonna say when you're 13, 14, 15, when I grew up I wanted to, when I grew up I wanted to organize orgies, was something that never came out of my mouth. So you know what I mean, so yeah, so what's your story of how you got into it all?
I have never had a proper job in my whole life, and I don't, I don't, I'm not very good at being employed. I don't like swapping my time for money. I never have. I've never seen the point of it. It's like if you give me a task, then leave me to give you the outcome. Don't micromanage me or stand and watch me. Like that's just never worked for me, and it hasn't worked for me like since school. Like I've never understood it, and so I ended up in the film industry. And the film industry was where I felt, and my real name's Ebonie. I went to a Steiner school. I lived in 7 countries before I was 7. I had this really random childhood. And so there's these 2 different parts of me, one that wants to be really wild and one that just wants to conform and be normal. Like I wanted to be called Emily, not Ebonie. I wanted to like have a TV in our house and eat TV dinners. I wanted really normal things. And so I ended up in the TV industry because it felt like a marrying of 2 worlds where I could sort of be myself and get paid and like have a job that worked for me. What I didn't realize is that it's a playground for codependency, and no one, like everyone needs to be better and brighter and stronger and stay longer and prettier and skinnier and like all of this stuff. And it brought out all of my people pleasing, never good enough stuff. And so I ended up using a lot of drugs, really trying to hide, not fitting in how I wanted to, really pushing myself, burning out completely, disappearing on retreats, going to like yoga or fasting or spiritual places. where I would kind of reset and then go back to work and like swing back the other way. So my whole life was like this pendulum swing from one end to the other, where I had these two different parts, and I found it so difficult to stay. And these days I have kind of the knowledge to know that that was my manager and my rebel in fight with one another, protecting my exiles and my true self, and this vulnerable girl that wanted to come through but never thought she was good enough. And so in 2009, there was the writers' strike in the States hit the UK, and there was no work whatsoever. And I'd actually done very well, and I ended up with a huge tax bill, and all of my friends got made redundant, and I covered the rent in the house we were living in Herne Hill. And it's a very, very quick story that meant that within 6 weeks, I was £25,000 in debt, living out of my car, having just started a new business, and was like, okay, I have nothing except me. I'm going to make it work. Because when you're desperate, you make it work.
Make it, yeah.
Yeah. And so I started on this journey of like figuring out who I really was. And I started this business called My Girl Friday, which was a virtual assistant, personal assistant business, one of the first in the industry. And within 3 years, I'd made my best friend my business partner. We were winning awards. I'd moved into a house again. I had all of this stuff. Everything looked amazing. And on the inside, I was absolutely miserable. I was running on shoulds, on how I thought you were supposed to run a business, on all of this stuff. It was very, very external. I hated who I was. I considered suicide multiple times, and something had to change. And so I ended up I sold my car, bought a one-way ticket to Bali. And I always say Bali saved my life, because I just needed some space. And I arrived in this paradise, and like a month and a half later, had 6 clients, entrepreneurs who I was making money for, helping them with their life. Like I'd literally recreated my life in the other side of the world. And I was like, oh, the world's not the problem. I am. I need to really figure out who I am, what I want, what turns me on, what lights me up, what I'm here for, what my dharma, my purpose is, all of those things. And so I set about spending the next 3 years really figuring it all out, trying stuff on and learning. And then I pulled it all together, all the teachers, all the entrepreneurs, all the spiritual stuff, everything, and kind of came up with the program that I have now been kind of teaching and working with my clients around for the last 6 or 7 years. And it really is about creating a life that is as unique and extraordinary as you are, that feels as good on the inside as it perhaps looks on the outside. And knowing that you get to evolve and you get to change, and it doesn't have to be the same forever, or what you said you liked one day you don't have to like in the future. And so it is very, very simple, but the more work I do, the more I'm like, oh, I haven't taken ownership of that part of my life, or I haven't taken part. And so like 4 years ago, I remember standing in a retreat space in front of a room full of people, and they were like, what's the one thing you really want but that you don't have? And the thing that flashed through my mind is like, I want to feel sexy. And I couldn't even say it out loud. Like I couldn't.
It sounds like cheesy, doesn't it? I want to. It's just the word sexy. It's like I want to look sexy. It's like I just think of Austin Powers throwing pants to bed.
But it also just made me feel nauseous. Like I'm like I don't want this thing that belongs to someone else. Like I want something that belongs to me, but I can't even say it out loud because I think I'm going to get judged and like all of this stuff. And so I kind of started this next level of journey of like, okay, well, what, like, is it because you can't say it out loud, and what is the words, and like why do some words trigger us and other words not so much, and yeah, all of that. So that's kind of where I guess started, and why I'm doing what I do now. And now it is much more the whole thing, right? Like just take responsibility and ownership of your
just
whole
own
thing.
it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's own. And do you think that because everyone's always had it, and I found this year massively seen it, that everyone's always had it, put it in different boxes. So you've got kind of the confidence you have in the workspace, you've got your sex life, which no one can really say out loud, and that's sexual confidence. And to me, it's always gone hand in hand. And in that, if you can communicate in the bedroom and say what you want in the bedroom, then you can walk into a boardroom and demand a pay rise, and tell a friend that they're pissing you off. But it's always been it's always different boxes, isn't it? And you kind of go, you've got a business coach, or you go to a sex educator, and which no one ever does because that sounds sleazy. It kind of, have you noticed a kind of coming together of it all, that it is all interconnected, and actually it, you know, you need it all as a kind of full package.
You, you absolutely do. And from my perspective, the thing I've been saying for years is the way that you do anything is the way that you do everything. And so find the place of least resistance, or the place that feels the most fun, or that you're like, oh yeah, I could play with that. Do the work there, and you'll be amazed how it affects everywhere else, right? So if you're terrified to go into the boardroom and like give this presentation, but in the bedroom it feels like, okay, maybe I could do that because I've got a receptive audience. Go do it there, because it's only ever going to help in the other place as well.
Yeah, because actually, if one of the, you know, communicating in the bedroom is probably the hardest thing that most people do. So I mean, especially women, but I know men do as well. But women have all have, you know, for, well, centuries and centuries, being kind of suppressed at having that voice and thinking that they have a right to have a voice. So if you can communicate with your partner, or say, I want this, and you get over that hurdle, then you can get, you know, then actually asking for a pay rise and saying you're not happy in the workplace is a piece of piss.
Yeah, and the thing across the board is you have to be less attached to the outcome. You have to not believe that the relationship is going to break or fall apart, or that you're going to be destroyed, or that it's the end of your life. And what I see is so many people, and I do think this is changing, but so many people who are in relationships where they actually don't feel like an equal, or they don't feel safe, or they don't feel like their voice will be heard, or they feel like if they ask for what they really, really want, someone might walk away or leave them, or, you know. And so anytime you're in a situation where you believe that the consequences of being your true self are going to result in the end of something, take the end of something, like walk away from that. But that takes courage, and it takes belief that there's something better for you. And I see too many people settling for scraps or good enough, rather than believing they can have everything that they want.
And what's your advice for having those conversations? Because often what you think's going to happen doesn't happen, but most of the time it doesn't happen. You know, people are worried about the worst case scenario. That's going to happen if I say this. It's very easy to quickly spiral, isn't it, into the absolute worst case scenario. What's your advice to clients when they are in that, of like just pushing them over the edge, just to say it and run the risk of having to walk away?
It really depends on the style. So there's two things. One, women are such perfectionists and hate rejection so much that we chess play in our heads. Have you ever done this, where you're like, you have worked out every single outcome?
Yeah.
And the truth is, you are a genius chess player, but you're not the other person, and you're not actually even giving them a chance, right? And I've been in a relationship recently where the other person has said to me so many times, stop assuming you know what I'm going to say or what I'm thinking, because it's just not true, right? So that's the first thing I want to say. It's like, stop assuming, because assumption makes an ass of you and me, right? It's a terrible English expression, but it's like, assumption.
I said the mother of all fuck-ups.
It is the mother of all fuck-ups. You have no idea what the other person is thinking or believing unless you ask. So ask. And the only reason you're not is you're scared. And like, fear is not as bad as you think. We've all got so used to being comfortable. We're so sanitized that we won't get uncomfortable, and we need to be more uncomfortable, because everything that you desire, all the joy and the bliss and the real experiences are on the other side of that, of comfort, right? Like they're outside of our comfort zone. So we need to get uncomfortable and ask. I would say don't go for the big stuff straight away. Go for smaller stuff, because we set ourselves up. So we ask the really big thing and get a no, and then to prove ourselves right, to prove that it wasn't worth the risk. And then we're essentially proving ourselves right, and you never ask for anything again, or you'll never share anything again. So start with smaller things. Start with things that like you want, but it's not gonna, like, it's not a deal breaker. It's not huge. It's not this massive thing. And you're not so sure what their answer is going to be. If you start with something small and practice, and then also like afterwards go, that's so funny, I really thought you were going to say no, or like, I really assumed that you're, I think, and like be a little more lighthearted, because we can make things so serious that if you can find the humanness in it, actually, because I think so many of us forget that intimacy and sex and relationships is imperfect and messy, and that's what makes it beautiful. It's not this perfectly choreographed thing where nothing ever goes wrong and it sounds perfect. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's the thing is, when you get that, I think, I can't remember, we had a guest on a couple of weeks ago. We had that conversation about people, where you see people say, oh, they're really good in bed, or they were shit in bed. It's like, to me, there isn't a good in bed, or it's how you are together.
Mm-hmm.
It's how two people come together, and those same two people could be considered really good in bed by someone else and really shit by someone else. Isn't it? It's that kind of.
Absolutely. It's like saying, it's literally like saying, oh, they're a really bad conversationalist. It's like, well, what conversation did you bring to the table? What were you talking about? Like, was there space in there? There's all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, no two people can, it's situational in the same way as we're talking about confidence being situational. And there might be some things that you're really confident at doing, and other, because you've probably had more practice and experience at them, and other things that you're way less.
You can be really shit at giving a blowjob, let's be honest. So yeah, those ones you can, you got kind of, those ones you can get away with going that they were shit. But generally, but on the, so in during lockdown and kind of the last 5 months, is there anything like with your clients, and is there any kind of underlying trends? I don't want to say trends because it kind of underplays it, or the kind of things that everyone sort of asks, loads of people are asking you, the main anxieties in sort of relationships, or the main things that people are kind of realizing within relationships that they've been putting up with, like like compromising, kind of, because everyone always says compromise, but it's sort of, how much should you compromise? What is compromise? Do you back down for everything and someone else calls that compromise? Or
I've seen a lot of people who realize that they don't actually know how to communicate. I've seen a lot of people realize that they don't actually spend very much time with their partners anymore, that they've learned how to manage a household, or they've learned how to, they treat their household and their life as a business almost, right? And so they've all got their roles and everyone just does those things. And there's something about this huge pattern interrupt that's happened for all of us, where suddenly it's like, I didn't even realize that was a pattern. I didn't even realize that we always do that. And so I've seen lots of people say, how do I change behavior that's been this way for a really long time? And, I've noticed I'm compromising because it's easier than actually saying how I feel or what's going on. And I think that the most important thing to share in that is you are allowed to change. And you probably aren't you're not in a silo. It's likely that the other person has changed somewhat too. And I always remember people, that's such a weird thing. There was the Rachel haircut in Friends, and there was a period where I had a hairdresser friend who was like, there's a whole load of people who had that haircut at the time, decided it suited them, and then kept it for years and years and years. And it just doesn't work for them anymore because they've grown and their face shape's changed and they are a completely different human. But that doesn't mean that they have to shave their head. That would be ridiculous. You can just get a slightly different haircut. And so when people are like, my relationship's not working anymore, I must throw it away. Maybe that's true, but maybe you don't have to throw the whole thing away. Maybe you just get to renegotiate it and have a conversation about what the next iteration or the next chapter of it gets to look like. So again, we're back to talking, I'm afraid.
That's what I was saying. Everybody's down to communicating, isn't it? But in anything, any relationship, whether it's business, whether it's friends, whether it's, marriage, that's what fucks everything up, isn't it? When people stop communicating.
And not having the uncomfortable conversations. I spend a lot of time talking about the containers for uncomfortable conversations, because if you don't feel safe, you're not going to say the thing. And so you first of all get to figure out, what is it that would make you feel safe? Or why is it specifically that you don't feel safe enough to say that? And it may sound really kind of pedantic, but you get to set some ground rules, right? We're going to have a conversation. Like, can we have this kind of conversation about this thing on this day? It's not hugely scary. I just want us both to have our dedicated attention and presence for each other, and really let the other person know. It's like, I'm not expecting to like drop a bomb. This isn't a scary thing, because I know that as soon as anyone says to me, we need to talk, I'm like on high alert and terrified, right? But if they say to me, I really want to have a conversation with you and I'd love to spend some quality time, like going deep into some stuff where we're both really present, are you available for that? That is an entirely different prospect. And
on that, what would you, what are deal breakers? Because a lot of people are like, there's so much white noise in relationships, and so what? And so, you know, I often say to friends, like, well, what are the 5 main things? What are your core things that are important to you, and forget everything else? Because there's so many, you know, you can focus on the little niggles and the annoyances, and there's so many of them, and you kind of forget what are the how would you, you know, advise the people to really focus on and find out and work out what the real deal breakers are within relationships, and not that they're hot.
It's not that they're hot, right? Like, and hotness changes so much depending on your perception and your consciousness and all the rest of it. And like for me, what I thought was hot in my 20s, like I'd be bored of in 5 minutes now, right? Like,
Oh, big time. I look at some guys now and I think, yeah, you're pretty, but no.
Yeah, because I want to go so much deeper. Like I don't just want physical connection anymore. I want physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, like all of those things. I want to be seen fully and completely, and I want to go there with someone else. Anyway, I'm distracted. Deal breakers. It sounds a little bit cliche, and I really want to preface this with when I'm talking about masculine and feminine energies, I'm not talking about men and women. It can be any set or combination of those within a relationship. But for the most part, feminine energy wants to know it's safe. And so if you are the feminine energy in a relationship and you don't feel safe, that's a deal breaker, right? You need to know that you can lose it and not be left or hit or just, you know, or gaslit or any of those things, right? You need to know that you can be your full and complete self and be okay and be safe in that. That's the most important thing. If you are the masculine energy in a relationship, you're walking around kind of going, I did good. Now we think that they know that they should just know that, but you have to communicate. You have to let them know that they're doing a good job, that they're showing up in the right way. And so the deal breaker is like, are you feeling heard, seen, and loved? Do you feel safe and do you feel appreciated? And this works both ways. I do a lot of work around the 5 love languages and really checking in
Love
and
that.
making
Explain that.
okay.
I love them. They're 5 love languages.
So the 5 love languages are physical touch, words of affirmation, gifts, quality time, and acts of service.
Yeah.
My least favourite. And if somebody is always doing acts of service for me, they may really feel like they're showing me love. But for me, an act of service is something I can pay someone for, and it's not a marker for me. I want quality time and I want words of affirmation. So I want someone to tell me I'm amazing and spend quality time with me without their phone, right? Those are the different love languages. So you need to get really, really clear on what it is specifically that makes you feel loved. Because if somebody feels like they are showing you love, but it isn't in the right language, it's like someone shouting at you louder in Russian and you not understanding it. Whereas if they spoke your language, you totally would. So it might not be that they're not communicating their love for you. They may not just be communicating in the love language that you want.
It's funny because when you look at it, I remember when I first looked at it, I think it kind of all made sense because I'm an action, not words person. I don't want words. I don't want loads of words. I don't want loads of words. I do need actions. Someone acting is how I see someone, and because I'm an action person, not really a massive sayer. And that's the thing it's when you realize that you go, okay. Now
and some of us have different ones for different things, right? So the way my friends show me love is different from how I want my partner to show me love. And that's also, it's so nuanced. And so I talk about you need to have a manual of you, a manual of me, right? You need to have an understanding of yourself. Like, what is it that lights you up? What is it that turns you on? And I'm not just talking physically. In my world, I'm talking spiritually, emotionally, intellectually. Like, what do you actually need? And I've got a client at the moment, and we've been talking about the relationship that they are in and how their sense of humour doesn't match. And for her, she's like, but is that a deal breaker? Like, I just don't know. What if he never makes me laugh again in my life, right? And I can hear that, and we can really go there. But also, what if you're supposed to bring different things to the relationship? So what if her role in this relationship is to bring the humor and to be that person. Because if you were both bringing exactly the same thing to the relationship, then that would be that's way less interesting. I likened it earlier to a picnic, where we can be so judgy and be like, well, I wanted everyone to bring exactly the same thing to the picnic so that everybody had the same thing at the picnic. But this other person brought, like this incredible Turkish salad that I've never had before. That's really cool. That's really interesting. But not if you're in the mindset of like, no, I wanted the same thing completely. Does that make sense? It's like,
which is ridiculous because no one brings the same thing to a picnic.
well, sometimes, but sometimes they do. Sometimes you write out, like I've been to things where everyone's just bought the same stuff, and I'm like, it would be way more fun if we had different things. So it's our perception of what we want, being clear on that, communicating it, and understanding like, what do you want your relationship for? Do you want it for harmony, or do you want it for polarity? Do you want it for companionship, or do you want it for attraction? And the way that we create those things are slightly different.
So the manual with all your clients, do you actually get people to write down this manual of me and have it properly? Yeah,
I do. So it started off as a concept, and I used to be like, yeah, just write that down in your manual of me. And then I made notebooks that had like the logo on the front, a manual of me. And it's like, and I sent them to my one-on-one clients. It's like, every time I say that, or every time you find something where you're like, oh, it's that, like that's my pattern, or that's the thing that I know about me, write it in there. And then I've actually been working on an actual manual of me. We finished the design, we finished all of so it's going to be like a journal that you can buy, that you can keep, that's leather bound and all the rest of it. And the COVID has ruined it for me, because I got a copy sent out to Spain so I could proof it, and it came out, I'm in Spain, I live in Spain, and it got returned to the UK, and so we're still waiting on this thing so that I can proofread it. But eventually this year we will have real manuals of me, so that you can write in, and there's questions and prompts and real things, and it can be like, you can write all the stuff that you want to experience sexually, or that you want to experience in a relationship, or that you want to have uncomfortable conversations about, and then I've put it all in there so that you can go really deep, because the more you know about
you haven't done it with Sophie, have you? You haven't done it with Sophie. I was about to say, as you were saying it, Sophie, for anyone who is watching, is our amazing social media manager, but she makes these amazing personalised kind of manuals and diaries. And as you were saying, I thought, that sounds like something Sophie would do. And if you're not using Sophie, you should be using Sophie.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sophie sent me, I was like, it hasn't arrived yet, Sophie. And she's like, it's arrived back here. So eventually we will get it finished. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to get one. So explain more on because a lot of people, the whole masculine and feminine energy is being spoken about more and more, and most people, in layman's terms, would look at it and go, well, that if you're a man, you've got masculine energy, and if you're a female, you've got feminine energy, and it's not that at all, really, is it? It's like you've got, well, you explain it probably better than I do.
I like to think of it as yin and yang energy, or receptive and penetrative energy, or action energy, or receiving. We have these different parts of us, and the feminine is more open and receptive, and that it also fills every space. Right, so it can come across sometimes as really chaotic, because the feminine energy is uncontained and the masculine energy is the container. Okay, so when you see people who have, let's say, a woman, and she's really in her feminine energy and doesn't know how to ground it with her masculine properly, she'll be really floaty, might have hundreds of ideas but never action any of them, never see them through to fruition. A woman who is like really into her masculine energy is really like do, and would maybe not give space for magic and miracles and other people and serendipity and like all of that kind of stuff that also exists. So every single one of us have both of these energies, and when we have them working together in unity, then we can have something really, really beautiful. And we both want to have it. I think the way the world is changing, it's no longer like men are in their masculine, women are in their feminine. It doesn't work like that. And for me, one of my favorite parts of sex is being able to play around with those energies. And that can look like control, it can look like leadership, it can look like all sorts of different things where we play with those energies on purpose.
And then that kind of brings it into sort of the power play, and like dom and subs, and also you get that, you get a lot of really powerful people. I'm just going to say men, the CEOs and a lot of them who are so in control in life, and they're the leaders, and they're always the ones who are submissive and the ones who are tied up on dog collars and being told what to do. And do you think that the masculine and feminine, the energies, have a lot to do with that? When people always say, why don't we? Yeah,
because so there's something incredibly relieving, and you get this huge sense of release when you are held. And the masculine energy holds the female energy. So when we are completely in our feminine energy, then we are able to completely let go and be held. And that's the role of the sub, right, is being completely held. And so whether it's ropes, whether it was whatever that looks like, there's an element of being held in that, which can be incredible release for people. And for me, playing with it allows you to experience the energy of each, like really in your body.
Yeah, because someone just said, I was told by a therapist in Bali that I had too much hang energy, but he never told me how to find balance. Any suggestions?
So people have this obsession with telling women they have too much yang energy.
Is that just men telling women that they're just too gobby?
No, I think it's also that as a huge society, like as a whole society, we have don't value feminine energy, right? So if we look at that in terms of things like art is very feminine, caring is very feminine, like all of those kind of roles. If you look at where the money goes, the money is not in those things. The money is in the really masculine things, with all the stuff that's around structure. And that needs to start to shift and change. So if we have, as women, have been brought up in a society that doesn't value feminine energy or feminine traits or a feminine way of being, then we won't.
Doesn't it?
Absolutely. And it's completely the reverse, right? Like it is, it's vulnerable, and it's yielding, and it's stretchy, and it's powerful. But I, like most people, thought it was really weak for such a long time. And so how can you access your feminine energy? By playing, by letting go of control, by having no limitations, by dancing or making art with no purpose. Like all of that stuff unleashes our feminine energy, and so many of us are terrified of not being in control. And so very often if a therapist says you've got so much yang energy, what they mean is you may have a lot of perfectionist energy, you may have a lot of needing to be in control, and if you were more in your feminine, you would feel more relaxed and safer without controlling everything, right? Like filling the space, being your true self, whatever that is.
Do you think a lot of, because obviously we've had it in us that feminine energy is a weakness, and showing emotion and having that not have the control, and is that we have then switched it as women to try and find as much masculine energy as possible to squash the feminine energy, thinking that the only way we're going to get in life and is to get that control back, and that's in work, that's in everything, and actually now, and I think it went a bit too far, and it's kind of coming back, as you said, to kind of the balance and know it and having it all. And it's not just in the bedroom, it's in the workplace, of actually women being women. Yeah. And not having to behave like men, thinking that's the only way you're going to fit into the business place.
I think it's so much more nuanced than that, because I think we also robbed men of their feminine, right? Like every single one of us has masculine and feminine, and what we have developed is this toxic masculinity rather than this healthy masculinity, which is really about boundaries and holding and honoring the feminine. The feminine never really lost control. They just forgot how to yield it. right? Like the feminine control or the feminine power, let's say, for it's a nicer word really around this, is in the mystery and in the mastery, right? And so it's not about coming in and like having something meticulously planned and knowing every detail and doing that. It's really about going with the flow, knowing yourself so well, knowing your stuff so well that you don't need to plan it. You can just show up. And so anyone can ask you anything and you're not freaked out by that. You'll take a moment and like drop into your womb space and into your body and ask and communicate from your incredible vessel, this body that has all the answers. And feminine energy is so powerful, and that never went anywhere. We just stopped listening.
And what advice on that? What advice would you give to men? Because we get, we've got, our membership's pretty much 50-50, which people don't realize. They think, they think it's just like all women on that, because it's a bit of a minefield out there for men. Post Me Too, it's kind of tiptoeing around as like, what should we do? Should we hold the doors open? Should we, how manly should we act before being told we're being assholes? It kind of yeah. So the advice to men on that front of being in themselves, that makes, I think it's getting better, kind of on men's mental health and being vulnerable and allowed to be vulnerable. Has been a big thing, hasn't it?
It really has, and I think it comes back to what we were talking about earlier. That assumption is where everything goes wrong, and so like assuming that people don't know, or assuming that someone wants something a certain way, or like explaining something to someone who knows it because it's their whole world and their reality, is never going to make you any friends, right? But asking questions always will. Asking, like, being interested in what makes someone tick and what works for them, understanding that in the same way as, I don't even know how the best way to say it, the politest way to say this. I can't speak for every single woman. I'm not every single woman, right? In the same way as you're not, in the same way, like, so rather than generalizing, and it's the same with men, right? Like, not every single man is the same. And so ask and communicate and don't take things for granted and be willing to get it wrong. We're so unwilling to get it wrong.
Someone's asked if the partner's not satisfied with the physical relationship, there's only, does love is not only sufficient? Is love,
if the partner is not satisfied with physical relationship, does only
love is not only sufficient? So that's like, because people do, how do you think, I think what we're saying, is people, they have, you have different desires and you have different wants, and a lot of people go, well, I can forego my sexual desires because we've got love and an amazing relationship on every other aspect, so is it really important? So we always get a lot of people saying they're a complete mismatch on that front, on the sex front. And how do you know when it's a deal breaker?
You know what? I can't make that call for you, but what I do know is that if you've decided that's all you're worth, that's all you're going to get. If you are clear and you're like, you know what, this is not enough for me, and I want to release you to somebody who gives you all of those things, and I want to be available in the world for someone who gives me all of those things, then let each other go, and let each other go with love. Because like we said earlier, when you said, some people are good in bed, some people are not good in bed, but they might be really good in bed with somebody else, right?
Yeah.
It might just be that, and you can love more than one person in your lifetime, but only if you believe that's available for you. And I think it comes from scarcity, when we hold on so tight because we believe, I'm never going to get anything better. This is all that's available to me. Or this person will not survive without me. It's the best, I'm the best that this person's ever going to have. And whichever way you come at it, I don't believe that's true. And I think that we've got such a society expectation of love and relationship being monogamous and forever, and if it's not, then it's a failure, and that's ridiculous, right? Like, who determines what a failure in relationship is? Maybe it's run its course, maybe you were a reason or a season for each other, and maybe it shifted into something else. And so, we live so much longer now, from my perspective, and it's only for me, like, let each other go to find something new that suits you now, or decide you're going to really or decide you're going to really work on it and like figure it out together, right?
And how do you don't really know, but like kind of letting someone go, um, to do it with love, to do it, you know what I mean? It's sort of, you know, I'm a real mathematician, and I've always been very much this plus this equals that. And when this plus this doesn't equal that, it's not right. People are like, why aren't you sobbing after a breakup, even though someone's broken my heart? I'm like, because within a couple of weeks, I realized that me plus him doesn't work, and I haven't taken it personally. But it's kind of, that's just sort of the mathematician in my head. But yeah, how, you know, on that front, they're kind of letting someone go, but with love, and doing it so that you're not scarring them going forward.
I think Hollywood's really done one on us in this, right? Like it's happy ever after. What does that even mean? There's no such thing. No one talks about what it is like to be in relationship. And if it's not working, if the day-to-day is not fun for you, right? If you're arguing more than you're enjoying your conversations, then it's the kind thing to do is to let each other go, right? But I think that we get really caught up in there is nobody else out there. And so I think your mathematician brain is working for you, because on a statistics level, of course, there's more people.
I know, it does my head in a lot of the time. I'm like,
but like for me, I'm like, but I'm the only person in this country that is like me, and no one else is like me. And it's like, so our brains tell us ridiculous stories. And so, but the good news is they're really malleable, and you can change the story in your mind. And in terms of how do you let them go, you know, it's an attitude more than anything. And you know what it's like when you've decided you're going on holiday, you just let go. You like walk away from everything because you're doing it. And you get to do that in relationship. You get to choose to say thank you and be grateful for everything. And if they can't do that, like, you're responsible for you. You're not responsible for anybody else. You can't change
for that anger. Yeah.
You can't change anybody else's reality. Yeah.
Yeah. And you just got to be, there are too many people, aren't there, who kind of keep the carrot dangling, and they're like, well, we don't want to hurt them. And I'm like, well, you're hurting them even more by stringing them on for another 6 months, knowing that it's not going anywhere and you don't want to be with them, but you don't want to hurt them. But it's more damaging.
It's way more damaging. You're denying them, and it's so ego-based. You may not think it, but you've decided that they can't do any better than you, so they have to stay with you even though it's not wonderful for them. No, let them go, so that there's somebody else out there who they are right for, right? And you can't have the person that you want while you're holding on to this other person, because your energy isn't open, it isn't available. So we need to clear up and close our conversations, and that is being adult, right? Like, that is go close a relationship with the same attitude that you went into it in the first place.
And what on that front, there is that kind of the people pleaser, and especially it's quite a big female thing, isn't it? It's sort of wanting to please a partner and I'll do whatever you want. But on that front, how damaging is that? And is it sort of taking that responsibility away from you and just putting it on someone else? And yeah, how do you have to turn that around?
I spend so much of my life talking about this. Women have been taught to people please, to be the good girl, to be polite, to make it easy on people, to do what everyone else wants. And have you ever been in a group of women where they're like, oh no, after you, no, you decide, and nothing gets decided? There's a lot of that is very feminine energy. And the likelihood is that in your world that doesn't happen, because you make decisions, because you've got I'm the energy.
Like clouds through the middle of them and going, right, we're doing this.
Yes, that is your yang energy, right? So oftentimes we're like, oh, we'll do whatever you want, but it's not fair to do that to other people. What you're actually doing is you're abdicating responsibility for your desire. So if you really want to have your desires met, then you need to vocalize what those desires are and let someone know by practicing on those smaller decisions. And whether that is where you go for dinner or the kind of thing you want. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You don't have to decide the whole thing. You could say, I'd love to go to somewhere like this, and they get to still make the decision, but you're not abdicating complete responsibility.
Yeah, because I find that, and actually being the person that is the one that normally takes control of that, actually it's exhausting. It's exhausting, and you don't want to be doing it the whole time. And actually, you want someone else to go, how about we do this? Or I want to do that. So I'll turn it sometimes And when someone will go, whether that's a friend or my husband, and he says, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, no, I'm not making decisions today. What do you want to do? It's your day.
Absolutely, and I think that works well both ways. And so it's often the man in a relationship who is asked to make a lot of the decisions, but you have to help him out, give them the rules of the game, right? So tell him the type of place, or how long you want to go for, or like what is important and what isn't important to you.
Yeah.
And so it's not that you have to make every single decision, but let's give each other the rules of engagement so that we can play nicer with one another, which is not saying, well, you decide, but you're definitely going to get it wrong because whatever you decide is probably not going to be right with me. Like, that's not nice behavior.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Just make a freaking decision.
I really want to make a lovely decision for us both now. Your attitude has really inspired me.
No, pick somewhere. Just tell me what we're doing without me having to think. But on the communicating side, going back into to subs and DOMs, what's your advice on kind of aspiring subs and DOMs, or people wanting to get into it, on communicating that and having that conversation with their other halves, or on dating sites of this is what I want to do or try, and being safe?
So, like, going into the ins and outs of it completely isn't my area of expertise. I find it really difficult to use those labels in that way. And I think that actually puts me in a really good position to help people out here, because when you're first starting something, the language, the lingo, the like rules, all of that feels too much sometimes to even get started. And so if you can explain it in really plain English, in your own language, to your partner, of like, I really want to play with feeling in control and not feeling in control, or I want to feel like I'm totally safe with you, or that I can play out being totally in charge. That's really, really simple language. Anyone can get that. And it's also not mega threatening to the other person who's suddenly going to go, you want to do what to me, right? Like, it's really, you're allowed to play it, to start somewhere and to use your own language and to explain, if you're a woman in it, most often it's like, explain the feeling you want to experience, explain what it is, the sensation that you want to experience, because the other person might then be able to help you with the context of that by asking questions like, do you mean this, or do you mean that? And again, we're back in this communication place where you need to be able for it to be a conversation, not a two-way exchange where you say something and the other person says yes or no. It's like it really does get to be a conversation. And so it might be that you take it out of the bedroom, then it might be something that you do beforehand, that you are having a conversation of like, there's some stuff that I want to try. I don't know what it looks like, but can we have a conversation about it? And then go into it more gently. That's my thoughts.
Yeah. And finally, I've just noticed what the time is, and Instagram chuckles off. We could talk for hours, to be honest. Final question is around guilt, because especially as women, no matter what we do, we feel guilty. We feel guilty for wanting to have a sex life and to speaking about it. As a mum, you feel guilty because I'm working. You're like, should I do too much work, or I'm with the kids when I should be working? It's kind of everything. There's just guilt there 24/7. And I know you deal a lot of that, of kind of accepting it, not getting rid of it. It's always going to be there, but advice on living with it and handling it and owning it.
So there's a real difference between guilt and shame, and it's really important to look at the difference. Shame is when we are acting out of alignment with who we want to be and who we believe we are, and guilt is when we are acting out of alignment with what we think we should be for other people. And so getting really clear on what your values are, and values, by the way, because it's a coachy word that gets thrown away all the time. Your values are just the measures that you are using to determine whether or not your life is turning out as you want it to be. And so we've all got this, we're all running it. And then underneath our values, we have beliefs that hold them up. So we have beliefs about what that value is. So I might value freedom and you might value freedom, but I think freedom is never owning a house, being able to travel the world, not owing anything to anyone. And you think freedom is owning your house outright. And so the way that we get to that value is going to be different. And so in terms of guilt, how do we accept it? We get really clear on what is ours and what is someone else's, what is our mum's, what is society's, what is our partner's, and make the rules work for you. So change the rules so that you can be more successful now, and really choose to honor and live by your values, which is what I call value filtered living. Like, put everything through filters. Is this working in favor of my values? And then let everything else go.
And actually on that, on the guilt bound, the sexuality is a big one, and talking about sex and owning your sexuality and owning your sex life, and as if it's perfectly normal. Actually, the guilt you have on that and the shame, as you said, actually, when you look at it like that, is external, and it's meaningless, and there's no reason to it. So it's kind of, I say that to people, it's dirty or it's seedy or you shouldn't do that. I'm like, well, why shouldn't you? Give me one good reason. And no one can ever, because it's so ingrained in people that it's wrong, that when you actually break it down, you can't, there's nothing.
No one likes to admit that they've been brainwashed, right? Yeah. And so if you are experiencing guilt, the likelihood is that it is somebody else's. So you get to really go into understanding, is it mine? And if not, let it go. And I think the best thing about the last 5.5 months is that everybody is understanding that life can really change, and it is short, and our freedom is not as available as we thought it might be. And so please just live how you want to live.
And yes, then you've got to be true to yourself, haven't you? We've had a lot more couples and girls join up and come to events and workshops who said they would never have done before, but it's made them realize that they haven't been true to themselves, that actually they had this fear and this fear of judgment, and then they've just gone, fuck it. You know what I mean?
Nobody knows how they feel until they're faced with it. And we have all been so busy, we've been ingrained to be so busy that we don't know how we really feel. And what stopping and slowing down, or like shutting us in boxes, has done is shown us our reality, right? Like, you can't escape it. And so when it's right in front of you, you get to, I've had the best time. I've had the best time because my life's amazing. And that's not me showing off. That came from a lot of really uncomfortable conversations and decisions to get here, right? And I just want everyone to do that. I want everyone to have those uncomfortable conversations, because on the other side is fantastic, deep, emotional, spiritual engagement, intimacy, and sex. Like, please
That's the thing. You need the vulnerable. You need the awkwardness. You need it to get anywhere, to learn and to grow. And whether that's sex or me being lambasted on LinkedIn for posting up the gang rape in Israel, and had loads of comments. They're all men saying that LinkedIn wasn't the place, and I've been fighting it all week. And said, well, it's the most sleazy social media site out there, where I get more harassment messages and more hit-ons. So if it makes you feel awkward and uncomfortable and change your behaviour, then good. I will keep posting it on LinkedIn. So, this week's been fun on that front. But exactly that. It's you just, to get the awkwardness, don't you?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, what's the time? Is there anything you want to add, or anything that you've got workshops and weekends, haven't you, coming up that you want to tell anyone about?
All sorts of stuff coming up. I think probably the best thing is, I love answering your questions. If you want to come find me on Instagram, come follow me, send me a DM, ask me what you want me to talk about. I am up for doing IGTVs. If you send me topics, I will really happy to answer them. And I could talk all day. Thank you.
Cool, perfect. But listen, if anyone's got any questions, then fire them at Ebonie or Sarah. And I don't think they saw you the last time that we do stuff with you. So no, it's been great. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. And sorry this room's so dark. It's the middle of the night here.
No, it's good. I'm up here. Do you know what? So I was literally, because I'm up in the top of the house, and someone after last week's Instagram Live message saying, seriously, you need to stop the coke habit. And I went, sorry? And they went, you're constantly touching your nose. And then literally, I looked at the video, and I'm up here now, and it's because we live right on the river with the windows open and like the hay fever going on. I'm like, there's no coke habit. It's like, what the fuck? So suddenly I got this random message on Instagram. So I had to go back looking through the Insta Lives going, do I really look like I've got some massive habit going on? Every time I touch my nose now, I'm like, no, hands down.
I have to sit on mine, otherwise I fiddle way too much. Yeah, I have like.
I said it's probably a nervous twitch. I'm just a fiddler. But
Yeah,
yeah, I'm on the wine. I'm always on the wine. But yeah. But anyway, do you know what? It's been great. So thank you, and we'll
my
see.
pleasure. Yeah, thank you
Bye.
so much, Emma.
Bye.
Bye.
See you later. She was epic. We will be back next week. Can't remember who got next week. Jessica Parker, I think. I'm not sure. But if anyone has any questions for Ebonie that we didn't cover, just send them to us, message us, or just message Ebonie, and we'll be back next week. So see you soon. Bye.